John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. There was no collision. In our system of justice, Karen Reed sits here today, presumed innocent, cloaked in the presumption of innocence.
Watch this. This is how it's done. Once you flip them, tell them how you flipped them, what they said that favors you, and they're the witnesses called by the government. Listen, this is incredible. Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to Buckle Up. It's the Law with Attorney Larry Forman. Folks, today we are finally at the end of the Karen Reed case. I know that we skipped Dr. Rentschler. I just could not find the slot for me to premiere his videos. I may still do him, and I may still premiere him on this channel during deliberations. It all depends on how it's going to play out. But today, folks, we are doing the closing. I cheated a little bit. I already listened to the closing. How could I not? How could I not? It literally just ended 3 seconds ago as of the recording of this video. Jackson said his final words. Brennan, as I'm recording this, Brennan is giving his closing, but who cares about his closing? I have zero interest in listening to Brennan give his closing. I'd much rather give you guys content, and I'm going to do Jackson's closing. It's probably going to be in 4 parts. I suspect it's long. It's about an hour and 20 minutes. So I'll break it up into about 20-minute chunks. 20-minute manageable chunks plus my commentary, so about half an hour per episode. Buckle up, folks. Buckle up, because we're about to go on a journey together. Over the next 4 episodes on my channel, which are going to premiere today and tomorrow at 4 and 7 p.m. Eastern, parts 1, 2, 3, and 4, brace yourselves. This has been the best closing argument I think I have ever heard in my entire life. Let's go. Oh, and before I forget, if you have not checked out our members-only content, go check it out. Membership started at 99 cents for an intern, and so you can check out all of the content that we have under the paywall. And most of it is going to be Diddy at this juncture.
There was no collision. There was no collision.
There it is.
There was no collision. I want to take a minute to start off with thanking you. I want to thank you for your attention. I want to thank you for your patience. I want to thank you for your diligence. This is not an easy undertaking. Most of all, I want to thank you for your courage, because courage is what this moment demands. Not just to listen, but to stare directly at injustice and say, not here, not now, not on our watch. That's what you're being asked to do. Stare down injustice. I want to start with a simple truth. You folks, not us, nobody else in the courtroom, you folks are the last line of defense. The last line of defense between an innocent woman and a system that has tried to break her.
Yep. That
falsely accused her, that tried mightily to bury the truth.
Yeah.
This case was corrupted from the start. It was corrupted by biases and conflicts and personal loyalties that you heard about. And most fatally, it was corrupted by a lead investigator whose misconduct infected every single part of this case from the top to the bottom. In our opening comments to you a few weeks ago, we told you what to watch for. We warned you what to watch for. We begged you what to watch for. Watch for the physical evidence. Pay attention to the medical facts. Pay attention to the science and the physics. But also pay attention to the integrity, the very essence, the integrity of the investigation. But you also saw something during the course of the trial that none of us might have expected, something that should sadden us, something that maybe would anger us. On full display, you saw the lengths to which some police officers will go to protect their own.
Thin blue line.
At the expense of the rest of us.
Yep. They're special. They're special because they're police. We are not special because we are not police. It empowers the jury. Very important.
Karen Reed, an innocent woman. Before we examine the evidence in the case, which we will do, we need to understand the very foundation of the entire system of justice in which we operate. It's the bedrock on which this entire system is built. Reasonable doubt. This isn't just a technicality, and it's not a slogan. It's a constitutional shield that protects the innocent and prevents the government from punishing without proof. The Commonwealth has the high burden to prove every single element of every single charge beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. As I said, those powerful words are not just some legal jargon. They're your mandate, they're your obligation, they're your community's protection against injustice. In our system of justice, Karen Reed sits here today presumed innocent, cloaked in the presumption of innocence. That presumption is not fragile. It doesn't just disappear because there's a charge or a badge or a theory. That presumption stands firm unless and until the Commonwealth clears that high bar, the highest bar the law provides, proof beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. That means at the end of this case, at the end of the trial, you think about one or more of the charges, you think, you know what, maybe that's true. It might be true. Then you vote not guilty. Mm-hmm. If you think it's possibly true or probably true, your vote must be not guilty. If someone among you thinks it's likely true or even very likely to be true, your vote is not guilty. It's because none of those standards, maybe, might be, possibly, probably, likely, very likely, none of those meets the extraordinary burden of beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. A moral certainty means a level of confidence so strong, so incredibly unshakable, that you could go home, you would go home, look your loved ones in the eye and say, I am certain. Not probably, not likely. I'm morally certain, and my certainty remains unshakable. The law defines moral certainty as the highest level of certainty known in all human affairs.
Yep.
Think about that. You must be that certain about the entirety, not part of, the entirety of the Commonwealth's case. As we discuss this case, you'll see that the Commonwealth comes nowhere near, nowhere close to reaching that extreme burden of proof. Mm-hmm. Ladies and gentlemen, on January 28th, 2022, it was a Friday night. John O'Keefe and Karen Reed made plans to meet up with friends, go out for drinks.
By the way, I just want to point out, I love the fact how Jackson gives like this intro of like what to anticipate, where it's kind of like a roadmap. There was no collision. You guys get it. It's a high burden. They haven't met it. You are empowered. You have the power. Now let's talk about the case. Now he goes about the best way to tell a story is chronologically, and he's doing exactly that.
We saw through video evidence and eyewitnesses that they were affectionate, they were loving, they were in good spirits throughout that evening. They started off at C.F. McCarthy's, which you've heard about, and eventually made their way over to the Waterfall Bar and Grill. When they got there, the Albert family, they were already there, and they were already drinking. The Albert family, it's been established as a very well-known family in Canton. They've got quite the reputation. Brian Albert was at the Waterfall, a longtime Boston police officer. His wife, Nicole Albert, was there. She was with him. His brother, Chris Albert, who was a Canton board selectman, he was there. His wife, Julie Albert, their daughter, Caitlin, and his sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, whom you met, and her husband, Matthew McCabe, whom you did not meet.
Well, we did, but they didn't.
They were all there drinking before John and before Karen ever arrived. But also present at the Waterfall that night was Brian Albert's friend, Brian Higgins. We know that he had a romantic design on Karen.
And let me preview this for you since I've seen it already. Jackson, in a brilliant move, pins everything on Higgins. Rather than trying to call it a conspiracy and trying to like create this narrative, you will see he pins everything on Higgins. And it gives the jury the scapegoat that they need. Higgins never testified in this trial. They never heard from Brian Albert. They never heard from Matthew McCabe or Allie McCabe or Colin Albert. They didn't hear from any of those people in this trial. So to them, they're all ghosts. They're all phantoms. It's fantastic. It's perfect. This is literally what I envisioned.
That becomes an incredibly important fact as we discuss the facts of this case. As the bar was closing around midnight, the Alberts invited everybody back to their house. They wanted to keep the night going. But the evidence revealed something interesting, that the invitation to John O'Keefe appears to have been for a different reason.
Are you coming?
An alternate reason. Think about the video of Brian Higgins and what Michael Proctor in his investigation completely and utterly ignored. Higgins was agitated after a day of drinking, agitated that it was John and not Karen, John with Karen, not him. Recall that ominous text that he sent to Karen with her and John standing just feet away. Well? He got no response. And then we see this. That's what Brian Higgins was confronted with following his well text. What of all things starts going through Brian Higgins' mind? Where does his mind go? What is he thinking about after seeing this, after witnessing this? He shows you. And if Michael Proctor had been the least bit interested, this video would have shown him too. Take a look.
It shows their mindset. They were in a fighting mindset. They wanted to wrestle and fight, play grab ass, whatever they do.
Sparring. Practicing, fighting techniques. Where was Brian Higgins' mind? What was he thinking about? And then what happens? Before you look at the next video, think about what you're going to see. This next video is after he sees John kiss Karen on the forehead, after he sends that aggressive text to Karen.
And for the record, when you play demonstratives like that, as you tell the story, you have no idea how impactful it is. I've done very similar things in my own trials when I would be like, this is what the cop said. Let's hear it in his own words. Don't just say it. Because if you say it, it's like, well, you're biased. Obviously, you're defending a client. You're getting paid for that. Right. Don't listen to me. Watch the video. And it's like, oh, right. That's right. I do remember that. Because that happened. I don't just have to believe you. I now saw it again. It reminded me. It's very powerful stuff.
We're standing just feet away. Watch closely, and this is what you're going to see. This is what Michael Proctor in his investigation completely ignored. Higgins is very clearly upset. He's agitated. Chris Albert tries to control him, tries to talk to him, calm him down perhaps. Chris forcefully grabs Higgins' arm. You'll see that in the video that you're about to watch. It appears that Chris is trying to calm him down from something. Brian Albert's standing right there with the other two men, but Brian Higgins is having none of it. He appears to be hyper-focused on one person and one person only, John O'Keefe. In an instant, Higgins angrily jerks his arm away from Chris. Higgins rubs his brow, and he directly gestures at John. A gesture that looks a lot like, let's step outside. Let's go outside. But John looks at him, takes a swig of beer, completely ignores him. Take a look. Michael Proctor, the lead investigator in this case, had all this footage, but he did nothing. He had access to the exact same thing that you saw. Why did he do nothing? A few minutes later, Higgins then texts John directly. You coming here? 3 question marks.
3 question marks.
It's now 12:20 a.m. These guys are not good friends. They barely spoke or even acknowledged each other when they walked into the bar together, other than a quick greeting. So why was Higgins coaxing John over to 34 Fairview? You
Exactly.
coming here after this?
Yeah.
And why not text Karen? Because at that moment, he wasn't interested in Karen. He was interested in John O'Keefe. This is about 5 minutes before John gets out of the SUV and walks toward the house. About 5 minutes before Karen sees him alive for the last time. So what happened inside that house, or that basement, or that garage? What evidence was there for the investigators to look into? What did they ignore? Laceration over John's right eyelid, black eyes, a large dog at the home, an obvious dog bite on John O'Keefe's right arm, a head injury from falling backward onto a hard surface, alleged surface, a text from Higgins, one of the last people to ever communicate with John O'Keefe. "You come in here?" Those words now echo in the wake of John's death. But Michael Proctor, he didn't listen. When John didn't come back outside, Karen, very oblivious to what had happened, thinking she was just left alone in the car, out in the cold, in the middle of the night, she got frustrated and she drove home. She arrived back at home, and her Wi-Fi connected to her car or phone connected to John's Wi-Fi at 12:36 a.m. It's an important time, 12:36 a.m. She left John voicemail after voicemail after voicemail. He was unresponsive. He didn't pick up a single call. He didn't respond to a single text. The longer he didn't respond, the more upset she got. Her voicemails reflect that frustration after the fact.
Very important.
That's the frustration that you hear
Yes.
in her angry voicemails. She uses harsh words and foul language. She's obviously upset. She's obviously irritated because he didn't come back out of the house and he wasn't responding. But Karen did not know what you know. She didn't know what the investigators should have known. She didn't know what was happening with Higgins and Albert and with her boyfriend, John O'Keefe. When he didn't come home at about 5 a.m., Karen went looking for him in a panic. As you know, her worst fears were realized when she found John beaten, battered, bloody, and left in the snow in Brian Albert's front lawn. At 6 a.m., when Karen found John, you heard about the scene. It was described in detail. It was chaos. To use Mr. Brennan's word in his opening statement, it was bedlam. The screams for help by Karen, the yelling and the hollering, ambulances, emergency lights, fire engines, ladder trucks, paramedics, patrol vehicles, patrol officers, all of them swarming all over the lawn just under Brian Albert's bedroom window. And of course, as you learned during the course of this trial, Brian Albert, a sworn peace officer, a first responder trained in being a first responder, never came out of the house. Never went outside to help a fallen fellow officer who was laying on his own property.
True.
Never came out.
Yep.
And you learn through the undisputed evidence that the lead investigator, Michael Proctor, for his part, never went into the house. The Commonwealth has struggled to try to prove that John O'Keefe ended up in Brian Albert's front lawn because he was struck by a vehicle. They have failed.
Miserably.
They cannot and they will not ever be able to prove that John was struck by a vehicle beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty, because the science does not lie, the medical evidence does not lie, the physics do not lie. Their investigation was flawed from the start because their investigator was corrupted from the start.
Yes.
By bias, personal loyalties. Folks, they cannot prove a collision. John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. There was no collision. So let's start there. I want to take a minute to discuss the actual science, the actual physics, and the actual medical evidence that was presented in this case. The science, it's an old saying, is known as the silent witness. It doesn't lie, it doesn't forget, and notably, it doesn't take sides.
Mm-hmm.
If there was no collision, what are we doing here?
Yeah, exactly.
In order for there
Wasting
to be
your
a
time.
collision, there has to have been an impact site. The vehicle had to have struck John, period.
Yeah, of course.
I want to remind you of some of the most important testimony in the entire case, and it comes from the Commonwealth's own medical expert.
By the way, that is the most powerful thing you can possibly do. Remember I was telling you guys that they were flipping witnesses to the defense? Government witnesses were turning into defense witnesses in the middle of trial? Watch this. This is how it's done. Once you flip them, tell them how you flipped them, what they said that favors you, and they're the witnesses called by the government. Listen, this is incredible.
Dr. Irini Scortibello, the Commonwealth's medical examiner, someone governed by law to make these decisions. We know that a person struck by a vehicle suffers massive trauma, broken bones, fractures, soft tissue damage, torn ligaments, contusions, soft tissue injury, severe tissue injury, crushing blows. None of that was present with John.
Nope.
None of it.
None.
Not anywhere on his body, including his right arm. Not one bruise. Nothing. The fact is, the injuries are not from a vehicle impact. Not his head injury, not those scratch and bite wounds. Not a single medical expert, think about this, not a single medical expert called by the defense or called by the Commonwealth has testified that John was hit by a car.
Yep.
Not one.
Not one.
Think about the irony. Not one. That's not just significant. It's literally the most important point in the entire trial. Listen again to Dr. Scortibello's words. Question. You did not include in your autopsy, in any fashion, any discussion of whether Mr. O'Keefe's injuries were consistent with a motor vehicle accident, did you? Answer. No, I did not. She told you, quote, I did not see any evidence of an impact site.
Oh,
end quote.
That's their
It's talking about
witness.
John's body. The Commonwealth's own medical examiner, Dr. Scortibello, performed the autopsy. She did it personally. She's the only one to have personally examined John's body, and she found no evidence of an impact site on his entire body.
That's wild.
That in and of itself is reasonable doubt. You don't need anything more. The Commonwealth's case is done. It's cooked. Their own experts said there is no evidence of a collision. No evidence of an impact.
There's collusion.
If you want to know what an impact looks like...
That was almost a Freudian slip. That was actually kind of cool. He almost said something like, there's evidence of collusion. There's not evidence of collision.
Take a look at this. This is what a body looks like after being struck by a car at 25 miles an hour. And this is what a car looks like after hitting a person at 25 miles an hour.
And I imagine these are photos, I thought initially, from Dr. Wolf, like with the Rescue Randy, the one that they destroyed at the end, to show what a real car wreck looks like, but I think it's from Welcher's.
Exhibits from Dr. Welcher.
The
Commonwealth's expert.
Yeah. All right, folks, this is an excellent place to stop the first video. I know you guys are itching. There will be another one tonight, I promise. And it is, this is one of those closings that gets better with each video. So stay tuned, because let me tell you, folks, by the time we get to the last two videos, you do not want to miss them. And they will premiere tomorrow. So we got part one, obviously right now that you've just seen. Part 2 tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern. Tomorrow, part 3 at 4 p.m. And then part 4 is going to be at 7 p.m. So I'll see you guys there. Oh, bye, everybody.